water for granted is probably the biggest issue within the United States, regardless where you live right now.
Let's face it, water is life.
You need sun and some other things too, but without water, nothing grows.
Groundwater is kind of mysterious. It's invisible, and nobody's sure where it comes from.
It took, in most instances, thousands of years for Mother Nature to accumulate the water in the aquifers. But we humans are pumping much of that water out in mere decades.
I think people aren't aware of the impending threats to the foundation of the water resources that we have in this region.
The bottom line is you can have all the money in the world, but you can't have water. But if you got water, you can have anything you want. It's the ultimate power, and it's the ultimate corruption. And that's what you see in the state of California.
California is a very large, diverse, populated state. It's interesting to note that while most of the water is produced in the northern part of the state, we have most of the people living in the southern part of the state. So that provides some challenges that have been met in a remarkable way. We import water into Southern California from the Colorado River. We import water from the northern part of the state to the southern part of the state via the California Water Project, the State Water Project. Water that comes from our area here, which is stored in Lake Oroville, moves down the Feather River through the Delta, and then is pumped at great expense into the southern part of California.
The main reason that we came to California as pioneers and as Western travelers was for gold, as well as for land. And so when people got here, they not only dammed streams to set up flumes and try to extract valuable minerals and ores, gold, but they also set up dams and conveyance systems so that they could use land for agriculture. And dams have been used for a long time. But now we've taken it to an agro-industrial level. We've built huge dams. These projects have completely changed the way that we can move water. They've changed the amount of water we can hold, but they've also made water much more of an extracted resource instead of an appreciated necessity.
Los Angeles sucked dry one area while nobody was looking because a bunch of tribal people lived there and they were able to take advantage of the situation. Well, we have so many complacent people here that are more interested in the economy, their financial situation, that the economy of the environment seems to be secondary.
Valley is a perfect example. They were a nice, content farming valley community, and all of a sudden somebody identified the water and moved it to a new location, being Los Angeles, San Diego, southern part of the state, and they're still hunting for water. They still don't have enough water. And that has put more pressure on Northern California. And they even talk about looking into Oregon and Washington for ways of diverting their water down because of our tremendous growth. And so you can't say, well, you can't come. We got all the people we can handle and have the resources for, so they're continuing to come to California, and it creates a real tremendous impact to all our natural resources, really.
Well, when you talk about tragedies like the Owens Valley and whether or not that's going to take place in the Sacramento Valley, I think you need to have faith. That happened, and we learned from it. And because we learned from it, it's not going to happen again.
As late as my grandparents' time, there were people who would come who had been born here, and they would come and fish in the creek. Yeah, not too many fish today. You'll see right there, the moss is worn off the top of that root. And that's where, as a boy, I was one of the children that that stood on that route and swung out on the rope and plunged into this deep pool. I wouldn't want to recommend that now. Pioneer families dug wells with a pick and shovel. And those wells around here went down as little as 30 feet. Well, some of them as little as 15 feet. And then they had to go down 30 feet, and then they had to go down 60 feet. Then they had to go down 130 feet. And you know, most of the wells that went down 130 feet are beginning to fail.
Where I farm, we've seen groundwater drop from a traditional 10 to 50 feet per year elevation below ground to anywhere from 100 to 120 feet in certain years. So wells are getting deeper. Used to be a 300-foot well was a pretty deep well. Now they're going 600, 700, 800 feet.
The traditional answer has just been drill down, drill down, drill down, deeper, 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 you know, more horsepower, bigger pump. And we're kind of reaching the limits of that now. And we're also paying a price in the disappearance of these habitats. This area has changed dramatically in the course of one human lifetime. When my grandparents were young married folk, a part of their budget for the year, for their food budget, was to pitchfork salmon out of this creek and can them. It's probably been 25 years since I saw a salmon.
Groundwater pumping is a very attractive source of water because it's always there, it's relatively cheap, it's got a high quality, but the problem is we're overusing it. And so what you're seeing is that the groundwater table is declining, causing all kinds of environmental problems, from land subsidence to lower flows in rivers and streams, to some creeks even drying up, killing fish and the birds and the animals that are dependent on it.
Water law in California has never caught up with the realities of groundwater.
Imagine a giant milkshake glass, and imagine each well as a straw in the glass. What California law permits is a limitless number of straws in the same glass. Well, eventually you keep sucking out of the straws and the glass goes empty. And that's the real threat for groundwater in California.
The state of California is embarking on an effort to maintain or increase the amount of usage rather than really focusing on conservation, on the most effective forms of conservation, which in the case of water, it would be retiring agriculture land in the San Joaquin Valley that is currently consuming 80% of the water that's taken out of the San Joaquin-Sacramento Delta. A lot of times this north-south battle in water is depicted as the greedy people in the north with all the water that are holding out on the 27 million Californians that live in the municipal areas south of the Tehachapi's, and that's not the issue at all. Because only 20% of that water is going to the Metropolitan Water District that serves LA, Orange County, San Diego. The other 80% is going to water purveyors in the San Joaquin Valley, where it's being used to bank away to sell for later. It's being used to grow crops that are in inappropriate locations. It's being used to do steam fracking of tar oil. This 80%, if that was taken off the table, there would be no water shortage in California. It is an artificial demand. I really think that this is a problem that is politically and man-made by wealthy investors. This 80% that's being used on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley is being used to water industrial agriculture land. Huge acreage that's owned by profit-seeking investors, not by family farmers, but by investors.
Starting out with nothing and being a small farmer, I've seen all the farmers, all my neighbors, myself included, becoming larger. So the concept of a small family farm is becoming less and less sustainable. Like there's a grower that raises 100,000 acres of orchard crops, 50,000 acres of almonds. Well, if he can make $200 an acre to $500, he's had a great year. At $200 to $500 an acre profit on a 40-acre farmer, he better have a second job, or his wife. And so it makes it pretty tough to remain small. And increasing the scale of operations to, say, a San Joaquin Valley scale isn't always better for the communities. I mean, you just don't see. The small farmers were more community oriented. They put a lot more back into their schools and their communities and shared resources. And you don't see that on the corporate farms that I witness in the San Joaquin Valley. It's more like everything is a dollar and cents decision, not what's best term, long term for the soil or the community or the school. The changing scale of things have not always made a healthier climate for our residents.
There are lots of people who own land and have water rights who no longer live in the valley. They may be the grandchildren of the last people who farmed that land as small farmers owning the land. Those people now live in San Diego or Marin County or Virginia, but the family still owns the land in the North Valley. So all they can see is what that water is worth. And the further south you can sell it, the more it's worth.
So most people think that water runs downhill, right? That's gravity, but water runs to money. And that's the facts. And does it mean that it's right? Not always, but we need to make sure that we have a balance. There's a lot of environment where there's not very many people. So there's a huge resource of water in the watersheds where there's not very many people who don't have very many boats and don't have very much money. And then there's the competing factor where there's a lot of people who need that water, who have a lot of boats, and have a lot of resources to make sure they get that water. So we need a balance. Look, do we want them to have the water they need? Absolutely. Do we want to take care of the environment? Yes.
There's a lot of small farmers that have been, for the last decade, working on better ways to utilize what little land they have, what little water they have, and those people are not the problem, and they don't deserve to be, drawn into this argument of what's going on. Corporate farms is where all the abuses are taking place. They keep wanting more, and they keep selling it off to the municipalities here and there because there's more money to be made in selling the water off than actually utilizing it for agriculture. How much money do you have to have until you got enough? How much power do you need to drive your life? It's ridiculous, but that's what our system is. It promotes it and it rewards it. And that's what we've got to change in this state. We don't need to make water. We've got water.
As people look at where they can develop more water, naturally they're looking at the aquifer as a very efficient place to accumulate water and to store it and to take from it. There's probably a place for that concept, but I think it has to be approached carefully and in a fashion that doesn't negatively impact the people that are dependent on groundwater.
There's an increasing demand for Sacramento Valley water for steam fracking of what was thought before to be expired petroleum wells in Kern County. Kern County extracted all the light oil decades ago. But now with the new technology of steam fracking, they can inject steam into these wells and loosen up the tarry oil to extract it and refine it. And as the price of oil goes up, this becomes economically feasible. But they need clean water to feed their steam generators. These steam generators cannot be used with salt water that would corrode them up right away and cause too many problems. So they need clean water from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. The water that they use to do this steam fracking becomes extremely toxic. It's causing pollution problems in the groundwater of the San Joaquin Valley. There's numerous farms down there that can no longer use their groundwater to irrigate their crops. Farms that have been there for longer than the Central Valley Project has been providing water to these fracking operations or to the other farms in the area. What most people are not aware of is the state of California is looking at the groundwater in this side of the Sacramento Valley, the northern Sacramento Valley, as a potential new site for a reservoir. Well, reservoirs need to have storage space. Right now, the groundwater actually interfaces with the surface water. The groundwater outtake from wells is balanced with how much water is flowing into it from the precipitation that we get and from some areas where it crosses with the creek. During the dry years is when they would pull it down. They would ask rice farmers to go to groundwater. During the wet years is when they would try to refill it. By pulling the groundwater down, it creates storage space. Unfortunately, it disconnects the groundwater from the streams.
Where does water in a river come from if it hasn't rained recently? Where's it come from? Well, it comes from the ground. The river is always the low point in the basin, and the ground is providing water to the rivers subsurface, laterally, simply by the force of gravity. People know that they value the creek. People know that they value these large trees that surround us. These large native trees are actually tapped into the groundwater. They need access to the groundwater to survive.
Well, there's a lot of concerns about increased fracking in California, which will need a lot of water. And also, anytime they need more water, somebody has to give it up. Because, like I say, we haven't created new water. So as we divert more and more water out of our existing reservoirs, there's more pressure on groundwater. A lot of our aquifers are gravel, and they've been full of water for years. Well, when you over pump them, you start getting subsidence. The ground starts slowly sinking, and when that happens, you have less capacity down there when we do have wet winters and a recharge. And also, we're not sure when you get down into those lower aquifers how long it took that water to get there. It may come from Mount Shasta, Mount Lassen. It may have taken 100 years to get there. And if we pull it all out in a 5-year drought, how long is it going to take to recharge that aquifer? So as you diminish capacity and increase extractions, you're creating a very terrible scenario for the future. We're continually putting ourselves, I think, in long-term jeopardy.
I mean, the Owens Valley is not just a metaphor. It's a historical fact. And we're doing that again. There are some people who want to exploit this valley to make even bigger fortunes. But there are going to be some profound losers if we allow it to be exploited in that way. And those profound losers are the small farmers, particularly along the edge, who are dependent on groundwater. The homeowners. I mean, what's your home worth if you don't have water? It essentially has no value. So the consequences of mismanaging this will be devastating.
There is a possibility that as we move forward and as we grow, we won't have enough water to sustain ourselves.
We're not going to be able to go back. We're in a completely different situation than we were 100 years ago because we have so many more people.
We have too much demand. We have too little of a resource. How are we going to preserve and more efficiently use the amount of the resource that we have? Not try to create new ways to move it around like a new bank account that we can transfer funds in and out of if we still don't have enough funds. Before we talk about peripheral tunnels, building any more dams, doing the same old thing to try to solve a very dynamic problem. We're not dealing with symptoms, we're dealing with a problem.
There's a lot of things that we could do to more efficiently use the water that we have in the state of California. Just shipping water to LA in an open aqueduct is a good place to start, because down through the desert, you're just watching it all go up into clouds, and that's about it.
Install solar panels over our already standing canal systems going down I-5. Try to reduce on the wind evaporation. Try to reduce the solar energy that's entering those.
There's other things that are available and being discussed. You look what happens with your trash at home right now. You used to throw it all in the garbage can, and that garbage can filled up rapidly. Now we recycle every piece of cardboard, glass, newspaper, and that garbage can hardly fills up at all. We need to start doing the same thing with our water. After we have reused it, if you recycle the water, you can use it again, not for drinking water, but for municipal purposes, for agricultural purposes. We have the technology today. It's time to move in that direction.
Everybody's got their own view of what property should look like, or land, or creek, or water should look like. But Mother Nature's been around a lot longer than any of us. She has a way to do things, and the tribes have always used the same technique to maintain the natural resources. Their respect to nature itself is to get better water when it leaves the property than when it came on the property.
People today, it seems to be, if it don't impact me directly, you know, I'll kick the can down the road. Our politicians, all of them. I mean, rather than take an issue head on and make a decision that long-term's good but may not be currently popular, they'll go with what's currently popular, and somebody's going to suffer.
They could go about doing things in a whole lot better way, you know, and we've got the technology to do it, and we don't, you know, and it costs us a little bit of money now, but in the long run, what does it cost you? Public health?
The time now is to take action, and people really have to find in themselves the ability to get off their couches and get out of their homes and stand in alliance with the rest of the community. We have to go back to nonviolent resistance.
We need, as collectively as a public, to say, you know, this is my health, this is my children, this is my future, you know, their future that we're trying to protect here.
Some of our grandkids are going to think, well, they were really selfish people. You know, they used up our resources, they left us with debt. We got a real mess here. We're going to spend our lifetime just trying to get it back in balance.
It would really be a shame for my granddaughter to only experience what a salmon is, looks like, acts like, and stuff in an aquarium somewhere. But, you know, I mean, the one hope we do have is that there is a little bit of a movement, you know, now with people opening their eyes and saying, wait a minute, you know, this is our home, this is our earth. You know, we've got to protect it, we've got to take care of it, or else there's nothing here for the future.
Frightened. And because they're frightened, it's a gut reaction, and the gut reaction isn't always in sync with what would be reasonable. And so reasonable kind of goes out the window, and people start having elevated voices, and you get to a point where nobody's listening to anybody. And there's this great capacity to share, and I think that it's really important to not overlook the ability to work together. When people stop listening to one another, then they stop learning, and when we stop learning, then we don't make changes. We'll never have all the answers, never. So what we need to do is we need to capitalize on what we know and kind of connect the dots between these different efforts.
We're all dependent on each other, no matter what we think. I believe we all have a land ethic. I really do believe that everyone has a land ethic, and that it's part of our natural being. And that when you appreciate that land ethic, and we all admit what we're really working towards, which is hopefully a beautiful place for our kids to live and grow, secure water, clean enough air, enough food, and enough leisure time to actually enjoy each other on that land with that clean water, and we all get at the table together, then I think we're working towards where we need to go. There's only one planet, and we've only got so much fresh water.
So you have a lot of political forces arrayed to exploit this aquifer, and they all have dreams of turning this aquifer into great fortunes. Well, it isn't that simple, because it isn't limitless, and as we continue to exploit it, the environment and the people who depend on their wells will pay the price.
The water issues today are no different than they were in the 1800s. Creator set in motion an earth and an environment that is self-sustaining. It doesn't need people. This earth is not here for us. This earth is here for itself, and we're part of it. And I truly believe that when we cross over, when we let go, that moment of peace, that there is a sense of awareness of what the purpose of life was. And all those things that we fought for that were useless will just be like an epiphany. And everything that we didn't fight for, everything that we didn't see, we'll see so clearly, but there will be nothing that we can do about it. And that we will leave it up to the living to fight. And that's what we're doing right now. So just think about that when you cross over. What was the point of your whole life? What? And what peace could you give? What legacy did you leave back? And the only thing that lives on is this.
This program was sponsored in part by Cal Humanities.